a small plane has crashed in the Bethpage area, and we've just learned one person has died in this crash. News 12's Antoinette Biordi is at the scene right now, and she has the latest on the investigation right now. Antoinette, what can you tell us? Antoinette, I just want to ask you, can you give us an idea of what these rescue crews, the emergency workers right now are doing? Are they moving any of the pieces? Are they looking through anything? Are they pretty much standing by, waiting for more officials to come on scene? What's happening right now?
Well, the investigators are actually all on the scene.
And Antoinette, you described earlier what exactly that plane looks like right now. I believe you used the word unrecognizable earlier. Can you tell us what this plane actually looks like for people who can't see it?
Jeff, if you can pan off a little bit.
All right, that was Antoinette Biordi reporting in the Bethpage area, giving us a live update on a small plane that has crashed around 8 o'clock this morning. Joining us now on the phone is Tony Ramnath, who says he witnessed this crash happen. Tony, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. How are you? Yes, I can.
I'm doing well. Thank you, Tony. Tony, can you tell us where you were, what you were doing when you saw this plane come down?
Well, I was actually just getting ready to finish the end of my shift.
Let me ask you, Tony, while that plane was up in the air, about how long would you say that plane was trying to level out, trying to maintain altitude before you saw it come down?
Well, he definitely looked like he was struggling.
And when that plane came down, Tony, can you describe what you heard and what you saw?
Well, I waited outside for a little bit.
And Tony, what do you make of the fact that this all happened right by where you work on what was a quiet Sunday morning?
You know, it was such a quiet Sunday morning.
Wow. Tony, thank you so much for sharing your sights with us on this small plane crash that went down around 8 o'clock this morning in the Bethpage area. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Now joining us on the phone is aviation expert Colonel Michael Kanders. Colonel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Colonel, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's start off by trying to figure out exactly what kind of plane we're dealing with in this crash here.
Well, I had seen a news account that identified it as a Beechcraft.
Now, Colonel, we heard officials mention earlier this morning that the pilot was having difficulty maintaining altitude. How much time do you believe the pilot would have had to try and get this plane back at a good altitude to recoup from this sort of problem mid-air?
Well, in this situation, altitude is your friend. It's a very, very difficult landing to make.
I was just going to ask you, Colonel, one of the witnesses we spoke with earlier said the plane was very low, and I wanted to get an idea of just how difficult it would be. We're looking at the stretch of space right now for the tracks. How difficult would it have been to land that plane without crashing?
Well, yes, typically a runway is about 75 to 150 feet wide.
Colonel, let me ask you this. When you see the images that we're seeing right now, you see this plane in multiple pieces on the track. Our reporter said in at least two pieces, the cabin and wings and other parts of the plane. What do you make of the fact that there is actually a survivor from this crash?
Well, this aircraft's been around a long time, and many of these aircraft are designed for safety. But yeah, pretty remarkable if there is one survivor.
And if you can, Colonel Kanders, explain to us how experience would come into play in a situation like this where a plane is losing altitude and you're trying to regain altitude and you end up crashing. Tell me how experience can really define or the outcome of this sort of situation.
Well, very important experience, but even more important is really proficiency.
Let me ask you my last question, Colonel Kanders. Looking at the weather today, it's a beautiful, clear day. How do you believe the weather, if at all, may have played a part in this crash here?
I mean, I'm looking outside as we speak. I'm seeing the winds actually from the west.
All right, Colonel Kanders, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us this morning and helping us to understand how this small plane went down earlier this morning in the Bethpage area just before 8 o'clock.
My pleasure. Thank you.